Hello everyone! Your Class 10 English exam is right around the corner, so we're going to do a super focused explainer today. Think of it as your ultimate revision tool to make sure you nail every single question.
So, does this sound familiar? You feel like you've studied everything, you're pretty confident, but then you get your paper back and you've lost marks on those so-called easy grammar questions. It's one of the biggest frustrations for students, and today we're going to put an end to that.
Okay, let's just get right into it. We are going to break down the specific rules that trip up almost everybody, even the top students. I promise, by the end of this short session, you're going to have the confidence to spot these little traps and get those full marks.
First up, we're starting with the absolute bedrock of good grammar, subject-verb agreement. And why are we starting here? Well, because this is where most of the mistakes happen. If you can get this right, you are already way ahead of the game.
Here is the first rule to burn into your memory. Anytime you see words like each, every, everyone, or neither on its own, a little alarm bell should go off in your head that just says singular. Even though it feels like you're talking about a group, grammatically you're focusing on each person one by one.
Let's look at a perfect example. Every employee. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of people, but that word every forces the subject to be singular. And if the subject is singular, the verb has to be singular too. So it's is, not are. It's such a common trap, and now you know exactly how to sidestep it.
Okay, next up is a really useful trick I like to call the rule of proximity. It's just a simple name for a powerful idea that clears up so much confusion, especially with pairs like either or not only but also. The rule is simple. The verb agrees with whatever subject is physically closest to it in the sentence.
Check this out. Not only the students, but also the teacher. So what's closer to the verb, students or teacher? It's the teacher, right? And since teacher is singular, the verb has to be singular, was. It doesn't matter that the plural students came earlier. What matters is what's right next door to the verb.
Now for a trap that examiners absolutely love to set. They'll try to distract you by sticking extra phrases between the subject and the verb. Things like as well as, along with, together with. All of that is just noise. It doesn't change the subject. You have to ignore those phrases and focus on the first subject, the real subject.
Let's break this one down. Ram, as well as his brothers, that whole middle part, as well as his brothers, is just extra detail. You could cross it out. The true subject of this sentence is just Ram. Ram is one person, he's singular, so the verb has to be is. Simple as that.
Okay, great job. We've tackled subject-verb agreement. Now let's switch gears to another area where it's super easy to lose marks, tricky word choices. We're talking about those little words that look similar but mean very different things.
This is a really quick but important point. If you can count something, like one student, two students, three students, it's countable. So you use many or few. But if you can't count it, you can't say one money or two hopes, it's uncountable. And for those, you use much or little. That's it.
Now here's a very specific rule that you'll definitely see. When you have a choice between exactly two things, the only correct word to use is either. If there are three or more options in the mix, you have to use any or any one. Just remember, either is for two, only two.
All right, this is it. This is where we separate the good students from the great students. These next few rules are the expert-level traps that a lot of people miss. If you can master these, you're setting yourself up for a perfect score. This is your secret weapon.
So, have a look at these two sentences. Read them out loud. Which one sounds correct to you? This is a classic question that tests a super tricky rule. Go ahead, pause, and pick one before we reveal the answer.
So, the secret here is something called a relative pronoun. Words like who or that are special. They create a link, and in doing so, they shift our focus. The rule you need to remember is this. The verb that comes after who or that must agree with the noun that comes immediately before it, not the subject at the very beginning of the sentence.
And that means the correct answer was number 2. So why is that? Well, because the word who isn't referring to she or one. It's referring to the word right before it, which is friends. And friends is plural, right? So the verb has to be plural too, are. The sentence is really about the friends who are going, and she just happens to be one of them.
Let's hit another advanced topic. This is all about getting your tenses right when you're talking about two different things that happened in the past. When you use a phrase like by the time, you're creating a timeline. One thing happened first and another thing happened second. Your verb tenses have to show that order.
This timeline makes it so clear. The very first thing that happened, the thieves getting away, needs to be in the past perfect tense. That's the one with had. So, had escaped. The thing that happened after that, the police showing up, is in the simple past tense. Arrived. So the full sentence is, by the time the police arrived, the thieves had escaped.
Okay, now for a really strange rule that catches so many people. When you see a phrase like, it is high time, or it is about time, your gut might tell you to use a word like should, or a present tense verb, but that is always wrong. The rule is absolute. This phrase is always followed by a subject and a verb in the simple past tense. For instance, it is high time you studied for your exam, not study or should study.
Whew, we have covered some serious ground. To make sure all this information sticks, let's wrap up with your final grammar checklist. This is your cheat sheet for the last few minutes of revision before you head into that exam. Let's do a lightning round recap of the top 5 rules. 1. The rule of proximity. The verb agrees with the closest subject. 2. Ignore those distracting phrases like as well as. 3. With who or that, look at the noun right before it. 4. For by the time, the first action is past perfect. And 5. After it is high time, you always use the simple past. Get these 5 locked in, and you'll be unstoppable.
And there you have it. You are officially equipped to go in and conquer that grammar section. So my last question for you is this. Which one of these grammar traps are you going to be looking out for most carefully on exam day? Thinking about that right now will help you remember it when it counts. Go get those marks. You've got this. Good luck!